Have you ever been building momentum on something and then one unexpected setback leaves you feeling drained, foggy, and oddly incapable of doing even the smallest thing? I want to tell you what is actually happening in your brain, why it leaves you exhausted, and 3 straightforward things you can do in the next hour to begin shifting the balance back toward action. If you want more practical, brain-based tools like these, stay with me to the end and consider subscribing so you'll get the next one. Imagine your motivation system as a battery that gives energy to your plans. When things go as expected, your brain predicts outcomes, dopamine tops up that battery, and your control panel, the prefrontal cortex, is able to steer action smoothly. A setback produces a prediction error. The world did not match what your brain expected. That mismatch triggers an immediate dopamine drop. The battery flickers. At the same time, your control panel starts to quiet down. You have less executive fuel to plan, judge, and push through. Meanwhile, your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, can crank up, interpreting the surprise as threat. And when you start replaying what happened, your default mode network becomes an echo chamber that loops the same worries and self-judgments. Those 4 simple shifts, battery low, control panel weak, alarm loud, echo chamber noisy, explain the heavy, slow feeling after a setback more than a moral failure ever could. Let me name each in one sentence so it stays practical. Dopamine drop is the brain's immediate signal that an expected reward did not arrive, which lowers urgency and pleasure. The prefrontal downregulation is the system that runs long-term plans, losing temporary capacity. The amygdala alarm is heightened threat detection that narrows attention to danger. And the default mode network is the mind's tendency to replay and ruminate, creating a noisy background that makes decisions feel harder. These are all normal responses. They are not evidence that you are weak. They are the brain recalibrating after new information. That normalization matters because the next thing many people do is internalize failure. They say, "I'm broken, I always fail," and that leads to learned helplessness, a pattern where the brain assumes effort won't change outcomes, so it conserves energy by disengaging. Learned helplessness is a risk if a setback is repeated or if you stay in the echo chamber long enough. It's also important to distinguish an acute setback response from clinical depression. If low mood, sleep change, or hopelessness persist for weeks or get worse, or if you have thoughts of harming yourself, seek professional help right away. If you feel overwhelmed or suicidal, contact local emergency services or a crisis line. Now for the practical part, 3 tools that work with your brain, not against it. I teach these because they leverage how your brain's systems actually shift after a setback. First, behavioral activation. Act first, feel later. When the battery is low and the control panel is sluggish, waiting for motivation rarely helps. Action creates its own dopamine ripple. The jumpstart metaphor works. Like a car with a low battery, a brief external input can restart the system. So pick one tiny, concrete action you can complete in 5 to 15 minutes. Send one email you've been avoiding. Stand up and walk to the window, open it, and breathe for 2 minutes. Tidy a single corner of your desk. These are not grand promises. They are reliable triggers that produce micro-dopamine shifts and signal to your control panel that it's worth trying again. Second, micro goals that minimize threat and maximize initiation. After a setback, your amygdala mistakes trying for risk. The trick is to redefine success as initiation, not completion. Instead of finish the report, set a micro goal. Put on your work clothes, sit at the desk for 7 minutes, or open a document and type one sentence. Measure success by whether you began. This reduces the perceived threat, trains your control panel to engage in short bursts, and builds a pattern of small wins that slowly recharges your battery. Third, a dopamine reset routine combined with structure and self-compassion. This is a daily scaffolding practice, predictable anchors that stabilize the control panel and create reliable micro-rewards. Examples are simple. A 5-minute morning movement you enjoy, stretching, walking, or dancing to a song. A midday check-in with a friend, or a message that says, "Quick hello, thinking of you." And a single achievable task before bed, e.g., prepare tomorrow's mug and notebook. These create regular, low-cost dopamine hits and reduce the volatility caused by big unpredictabilities. Pair structure with self-compassion. Change the inner question from "what is wrong with me" to "what support does my brain need now?" That phrasing alone tends to deactivate the alarm system and quiet the echo chamber because it directs attention outward to needs and actions instead of inward to blame. Let me give you a short vignette so this feels alive. A client I saw last month, let's call her the project lead, had been driving a plan for months when a funding decision fell through. She described waking up with lead in my limbs, the phone feeling heavy in her hand, sunlight outside, and no capacity to step into it. In our brief exchange, she said aloud, "I can't even start." I asked her to set a tiny behavioral activation, put on a sweater, and walk outside the building for 3 minutes. She resisted at first, then texted me, "I did it. The air felt cold, but okay." That 3-minute walk didn't fix the funding, but it created a shift, small pleasure, a factual data point that she could act, and a tiny dopamine boost. The next day, she set a micro goal to write just the first sentence of a new plan. Again, initiation, not completion, was the measure. Over a week, she rebuilt a pattern of short starts and gentle structure, and the alarm tone receded. Across these tools, the common thread is that you are giving your brain clearer, smaller, and kinder inputs so it can recalibrate. That's the turning point. A setback is not a final verdict. It's a signal that your brain needs new evidence to update its predictions. When you provide that evidence in bite-sized, low-threat ways, the dopamine battery recharges in increments. The control panel regains capacity, the alarm can lower, and the echo chamber quiets. Before I close, a few clinical caveats. These strategies help for acute responses and mild to moderate functional dips. They are not a substitute for therapy, psychiatric care, or medication when those are needed. If your sleep, appetite, concentration, or sense of hope are significantly impaired for more than a couple of weeks, please reach out to a mental health professional. And again, if you feel at risk of harming yourself, contact local emergency services or a crisis line immediately. Right now, choose one immediate micro-action. 3-minute walk, send one short message, or tidy a single surface. Do it now if you can. If you do it, notice the small signals, a tiny rise in mood, a shift in clarity, and treat that as meaningful data for your brain. Summary: setbacks create a prediction error that drops dopamine, battery, quiets the prefrontal control panel, amplifies the amygdala alarm, and leaves the default mode network looping. You can respond with behavioral activation, Act first. Micro goals. Make initiation the win. And a dopamine reset routine paired with simple structure and self-compassion. These approaches are small, neuroscience-aligned ways to tilt the system back toward momentum. Next time, we'll look at how your brain learns from errors, how to make the teaching stick so future setbacks change less about your identity and more about your strategy. If this helped you, share one micro action you tried in the comments. Subscribe and click the bell so you'll get more practical tools like these. And if you're struggling in a deeper way, please seek professional support or contact crisis services in your area.